One. Welcome all. I'm here with Dr. Fred Yelverton, and welcome to the 9th in a series of AGIF sustainability webinars. In the coming months, every week, we will continue to deliver webinars on turf and club management with industry leaders to supply career building information to professionals in Asia. The Asian Golf Industry Federation is a not-for-profit membership federation comprised of suppliers and facilities in the turf, club, and sports industry, and the Federation focuses on building sustainable practices both in the environmental and economic aspects throughout the Asia-Pacific region. We believe strongly that key in the development of a sustainable industry is the education and empowerment of professionals in the industry like yourself on the call today. We have developed the AGIF certificate in greenskeeping, which is supported by the RNA and 5 AGIF member organizations. The CIG focuses on developing the skill set of the greenskeeper turf professional throughout Asia. And we also focus on club management education as a partner of the Club Management Association of America. We rolled out their education in Asia for the pathway to the Certified Club Manager degree. The CCM is considered the gold standard in club management in the industry globally, and managers in Asia can now achieve the necessary education here as a result of this partnership with the CMAA. It is vital to have strong partners in implementing education throughout Asia, and our education is recognized for credits from the PGA of America, the PGA of GB in Ireland, the PGA of Australia, the PGA of Japan, and the Club Management Association of America, and the GCSAA. Due to travel restrictions from the COVID-19 epidemic, webinars are the only way that we can continue to deliver education at the moment. We will resume the event education when travel restrictions ease, and we'll keep you posted as this develops. Over the past few months, we have spent a lot of time improving our digital offering and membership benefits. For more information, please log on to the website www.agif.asia, as well as our LinkedIn and Facebook company pages. Please also sign up for our weekly newsletter to join the 10,000 plus industry contacts in receiving a weekly industry update. Lastly, the AGIF is a not-for-profit federation, and now more than ever, we rely upon membership dues to operate. So if you like what we do or you think that your facility or company will benefit from communicating with the industry, please note that our membership benefits are substantial and can be seen on our website under AGIF membership benefits. And please take a look. And if you're already an AGIF member, thank you so much. Your ongoing support is greatly appreciated. We'd like to thank the sponsor for today's webinar. Without your support, we're not be able to run this event. It is the Toro Company, and is a founding member of the AGIF and a strong supporter of industry education. On to some housekeeping issues. Dr. Yelverton will present on a topic for roughly 45 to 60 minutes, and we'll have 30 minutes after that for Q&A. The chat buttons are on throughout, so please feel free to ask questions, which we can then voice over to Dr. Fred during the Q&A session. And now on for the main event, and to introduce our speaker. Fred H. Yelverton, PhD, is Professor and Extension Specialist, Department of Crop Science, Co-Director, Center for Turfgrass Environmental Research and Education for North Carolina State University. Dr. Yelverton has been faculty member at North Carolina State University for 36 years. Since 1995, he has been the Professor of Turfgrass Science in the Crop Science Department at NCSU. His specialties include turfgrass weed management, turfgrass management, fate and behavior of pesticides, plant growth regulators, weed biology, and ecology. The doctor has authored 92 referred journal publications, 145 published research abstracts, 7 books and/or book chapters, 158 extension publications, and 101 popular press articles. His speaking engagements and consulting activities include 187 national and international invited presentations involving turfgrass since 1995, and have taken him to 47 states and 6 continents. And today we have the great honor of welcoming him to the AGIF Sustainability Series. Dr. Fred Yelverton, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. I'm a good, let's say good morning, everyone. It's evening for me, but glad everyone could join us, and certainly I look forward to talking with you about weed management in turf. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, let's see. Get that up and going. Okay, how are we doing? Good?
You still need to do the full screen like last time. Now it's sort of a split screen. So if you can
Yeah,
repeat
it
what
did
you
split
did
screen, didn't it?
this time.
Let's see. How's that?
That's it. Perfect.
All right, good. Okay, so look forward to visiting with you guys for the next, hour and a half or hour or however long it goes. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure I know people here. I can't see you, but I am sure that I've crossed paths with you. Some of you, I've been to Asia a few times, as I will show you as we go along here. I'm going to skip over this in the interest of time, Eric, because you already mentioned it. But I will mention I've been teaching with GCSAA since 1995. One of the things I'll mention to you is we have a website called turfiles.ncsu.edu. Please use that site. It's free. And we put all of our turfgrass management information up there. This is the most used website in the world for turfgrass information. So feel free to use it. I'm sure some of you already do. We have all of our publications up there. I will show you here. This is what it looks like when you pull it up. So there's a wealth of information on here. We write articles and put on here like timing of pre-emergence herbicides. We have all of these turfgrass insects, diseases, weeds, etc. On here. So we publish articles that are kind of cutting edge stuff that we're working on research. Here's one. This is actually pretty cool. We have I'm getting trigger happy. I have a research project going on where we actually have mounted a sprayer on a drone. So we're actually spraying golf courses, hard to get to areas with drone sprayers. It actually works quite nicely. So anyway, all kinds of cutting edge stuff up there. So just feel free to use that. Just in case some of you don't know exactly where I am here on the East Coast. North Carolina is kind of, it's a southern state, but it's about halfway between, or maybe, not halfway, but closer to Florida than Maine, but it's in the mid-Atlantic. And we have both cool season and warm season grasses. It's really quite a diverse state. We have the mountains in the western part of the state. You see here some beautiful golf courses that are all cool season golf courses. And then we go down east. Well, this is not the east, this is the central part of the state. Many of you are familiar with Pinehurst. That's in North Carolina. And then as you get closer to the coast, we actually have palm trees. So we actually go from palm trees in the east to ski resorts in the west. So it's really quite a diverse climate that we have there. And so Eric, I show you this picture of Pinehurst at the US Open, and I often tell people without letting them count how many mowers were on that hole right there. So maybe we can have maybe you can give a door prize, see who, I know how many it is, but I'm gonna switch off before people can count it.
Too late.
So maybe you can do it at the end. You can have a contest to see who gets it right.
Okay.
So I do a lot of work around the world, and I've certainly been to Asia several times. But so I'm very familiar. I guess where I'm going with this, I'm very familiar with your conditions in Asia, more tropical golf courses. Of course, I've worked in Dubai. I've been to Singapore. Eric, I told you I'd been there. I took this picture. This is not some stock photo. This is my picture. So I've been to Singapore, lovely place, and hopefully I'll get back there again someday soon. So, I was telling Eric before we got started, I do work in the true tropics. We have North Carolina is in the temperate zone, but we're not quite tropical. We do have palm trees and obviously warm season grasses, but I do a lot of work in the true tropics. Most of the research I do in the tropics is in the Caribbean. Here is Jamaica, showing some research trials there. So when it comes to weed control in tropical environments, I'm kind of, I really enjoy that. And I do a lot of work on weed control in the tropics. So it's good that we could catch up and visit here. I certainly understand your conditions in tropical golf courses. And as all of you know, tropical golf courses are unique. And from a weed control standpoint, it becomes really unique because we have to, most of the rules with pre-emergence herbicides and things like that kind of go out the window in that, we have to do it 12 months out of the year and time it accordingly. So, one of the things too, of course, Singapore sits right on the equator, but one of the things a lot of people don't understand about the tropics is that even though your temperature may not drop in the winter, certainly your day lengths get shorter, and when you grow in Bermuda grass, that's a big deal with shorter day length. So there are some subtle things there with wintertime versus summertime, even in the tropics. So I just wanted to mention to you some of the work in the tropics. And I'll bet, I know some of you here will have seashore paspalum. This is Cap Cana in Dominican Republic, and in the Caribbean Sea, and they are seashore paspalum from wall to wall. I'll make a few comments, Eric, about seashore paspalum. Some of the basically your choices in the tropics are seashore paspalum and Bermuda grass. Now keep in mind, I'm a weeds person. I don't have anything against seashore paspalum. So please understand, I'm gonna preface my next comment on that because this is seashore paspalum here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And seashore paspalum is really, really beautiful grass. But I'm gonna make the comment, and I make this all the time when I talk about tropical turf management. If it's kind of a 50-50 environment between seashore paspalum and Bermuda, usually that needle, in my view, is going to go toward Bermuda because you can get seashore paspalum out of Bermuda, but getting Bermuda out of seashore paspalum is essentially impossible. So, if it's kind of a 50-50 environment, that kind of tilts the equation toward Bermuda, in my view. So basically, while seashore paspalum is very, very good, and all this is related to weed control, which I'll get to in a moment, but seashore paspalum is very, very good. But I think to use seashore paspalum, you have to have an environment that's very well suited for seashore paspalum and not for Bermuda grass. So in other words, you got to have some real salt issues there, salt tolerance issues. Here's a good example right here. I took this picture in Dubai, but you can see here, and I'm not sure y'all can follow my little arrow here. Eric, can you see that okay?
We can see it. Yes, Fred.
Okay.
We can see it.
So here's a good example of, and this is a good weed control, weed management photo here. This is a high salt environment, and where you see all of this annual bluegrass down here, that's Bermuda. But look up here where you see seashore paspalum. So, there's a couple of points I want to make here. One is when you have a, turf competition, I don't want you to think about, I always caution people, don't equate weed control with herbicides. Herbicides are very important, and we'll get to some of those in a moment, but weed management is much broader than just herbicides. Turf competition, and I'll continue to hit on this as we go along, turf competition is exceptionally important in controlling weeds, and this is a good example right here. So basically what I'm getting at here is that for weed management starts with the right turfgrass species. And you can see that in this photo. So when you have a competitive turfgrass species, you can see how it will crowd out your weeds in a lot of situations. On the other hand, if you have a turfgrass species that's not well adapted for your site, it's not going to be healthy, and then you're going to get weed invasion. So, weeds are often an indicator of other problems. Now, let me clarify that. You can have perfect turf and you can still have weed problems. What I want you to remember is that when you have really good competitive turf, you'll still have weeds, but you'll have less weeds. And that means you use less herbicide, which means you don't spend as much money. And we could go on and on. But so what I'm saying is any weed management program that's successful is going to begin with choosing the right turfgrass species. So for you guys in Asia, basically it's going to come down to two species. That would be Bermuda or seashore paspalum, and sometimes zoysia grass. I know in Hong Kong and places like that, and many areas, if you have, some kind of light issues, some sunlight quality issues, seashore paspalum and Bermuda, you might be looking at zoysia or something like that. So I realize there's some other situations there, but for the most part, it's going to be either seashore paspalum or Bermuda. Again, here's Puerto Rico, and done a lot of work done. This happens to be Bermuda. I'm going to hazard the guess here, Eric. Most of the attendees are Bermuda grass, with some seashore paspalum in is probably a good guess here. So we'll talk a little bit about both. And I've kind of already talked about that, Bermuda versus paspalum. I love both of them, but if you have if you're going to use paspalum, I would argue that it needs to be a site that is very, very well adapted to paspalum. So paspalum is very well adapted for high salt environments. So make sure that you have plenty of it needs to be an environment just for seashore paspalum. So with that, just keep that in mind. Let's see where we go here. Okay, so one of the problems with seashore paspalum is that you don't have a lot of herbicide tolerance. And again, I have listed on this chart here, a list of herbicides that are tolerant to seashore paspalum. It's certainly not a complete list, but certainly your participants can use this. Eric, it's kind of a guide. And so with that, we probably won't talk about seashore paspalum anymore unless there's some specific questions about it. We'll just move into straight talking about weed control. So just a couple things here. Remember, I want to make some general comments about just general weed management issues. And we've already talked about planting a competitive turf. Now, here's one of my favorite weed control slides here, and I think this shows a fundamental issue about weed management, and that is that, keep this in mind, that weeds basically exist in the upper inch of soil, or upper 2.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters would probably be a good thing to keep in mind as you think about where the weeds are. Now, what do I mean by that? And I'm sorry, I keep hitting the button here, Eric. I'm gonna take my hand off the mouse and maybe just use the arrow keys. I'm gonna take my hands off so I'll quit accidentally advancing the slides. So what I want to show you here, this is kind of cool. This is a good weed management principle here. So I want you to look at this picture. Well, I got to touch the mouse here. And you see all that, this is Bermuda grass overseeded to perennial ryegrass. This is in Arizona, actually, Eric, one of your old stomping grounds there, as we say. And what you'll see here is that there's no POA right in here. So what happened? Well, what happened was that, you see this, they did a little drainage work right there. And so what they did was they came in here in the summer and they cut out this sod, right? And then they did the work, put the new sod in, and then they overseeded it. Okay, and notice that there's no POA in the new Bermuda grass sod or in the perennial ryegrass here. Why is that? Well, it's because the POA is in the upper centimeter or 2 centimeters of soil. So when they cut it out, they actually remove the weed seed. Okay, now you may say, well, isn't the weed seed below the sod? And the answer to that question is, of course, but it can't germinate down below that sod, right? The sod is about 2 centimeters deep. And so POA doesn't have the energy to grow up through that sod. So, a lot of times when you're faced, where am I going with this? A lot of times when you're faced with a situation where, you got collars or something that you just got a weed problem, you can't seem to get under control. Don't forget, one good option is just to cut it out with a sod cutter. And this is, I often joke, this is the Augusta National approach to weed control here. What they'll do is when you see the masters, you'll see a little bit of POA somewhere, and then they'll just map it out and go cut it out and put new clean sod in there. So keep in mind that weed seed exists in that upper centimeter or so of soil, and you can a lot of times just cut it out and put new sod in there, and you will solve the problem. Now, along those lines, one of the things I want you to keep in mind is, and I don't know whether, I bet some of you guys have used this, a phrase mower. These are used really commonly in sports fields now, but, a lot of times you can accomplish some of this with a phrase mower, where you go in there and you cut out, this is not cutting it out very deeply, but you can go in there and cut it out. And, and a lot of times you can remove weed seed doing this. Here's an example right here. I'm going to use my mouse here again and try not to advance the slides again. You can see this weed population over here. This is a lot of Poa annua. And you can see where we ran a phrase mower down here and just cut a lot of the turf out. And you can see the Bermuda just came right back in, and we removed a lot of the weed seed with it. So remember that, weed control involves a lot more than just herbicides. Now, one other thing I want you to keep in mind, just some common sense things here, is when you talk about weed management. And remember, if you keep in mind weed seed or basically in the upper 2 centimeters of soil, one of the worst things you can do is introduce weeds on sod. This is purple nutsedge here. You can see the sod square there where they introduced purple nutsedge. So make sure you have clean sod. One of the big ways we get weeds on golf courses is that we introduce it on sod. So be careful when you're putting sod on your golf course. Now, a couple other things I just want to talk about, and we're going to talk about individual weeds here in just a moment, but again, just getting down to some of the basics on weed control. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what kind of conditions weeds prefer. One of the conditions that sedges have, and you guys have a lot of sedges in Asia. You got purple nutsedge, you got some kalingas and things like that. Remember this about sedges: they love wet, waterlogged soils. So when you're in a high rainfall environment, you're going to have more sedge problems. It's one of the big problem weeds in Asia. And this is actually one of my favorite weed control slides too. That's why I wanted to show it to you. Keep in mind that when you have a situation like this, you can see this is a drainage problem, right? You see the T up here, and then you see a drainage problem here. You can spray herbicides from now until the end of time, but if you don't correct this drainage problem, you're going to continue to have sedges. So this is kind of one of those IPM techniques. Make sure you look at the underlying cause of why you have that weed problem to begin with. And, you know, that means that in this case, correcting this drainage problem, as long as you have these wet soils right here, you're going to continue to have sedges. Now, another thing I want to mention to you too is that weeds can be indicators of other problems. And I want to mention one in particular here. Spurges are a big problem in the tropics, right? Now, spurges, I'll show you a picture here in a minute, but spurge is the one where you break the stem and it's got the milky sap, little white milky sap. Coincidentally, here's a little known fact. Well, I'll throw in some little known facts here, Eric, because you have this in Asia. A spurge, that little weed that you have growing on your golf course, is actually in the same family as what? A rubber tree. It's in the same family. You know how you cut a rubber, you know, the latex that's in a rubber tree. Well, spurge, that's the same milky sap. So it's a diverse family. So what I wanted to show you here is that spurges can be an indicator of high nematodes. So when you see a bad spurge problem on the golf course, typically what I tell people is they need to take a nematode sample, because it is an indicator that you may have a nematode problem. Doesn't mean you absolutely have a problem. It means it's an indicator. Okay, so that's a big difference. The other thing I want to mention here is look at the compacted soil. Here's another big tropical weed right here, goosegrass. So if you have a lot of goosegrass problems, it may be an indication that you have a compacted soil, and you know, that means you need to aerify, obviously. So compaction is a big problem on golf courses, obviously, and goosegrass, the presence of goosegrass usually means there's a compaction issue there. Okay, so let me just switch gears now and talk about in tropical and subtropical environments, weeds tend to become perennials. So successful control will take a combination of post-emergence and pre-emergence herbicides that are carefully timed. And what do I mean by that? Well, here is a bad tropical signalgrass problem, another big problem in Asia, tropical signalgrass. We'll talk about that here briefly in just a few moments. But tropical signalgrass is a perennial, and you can go in with post-emergence herbicides and spray tropical signalgrass out. But if you don't use a pre-emergence herbicide in combination with it, it just continues to regerminate, right? So what you have to do in these tropical environments is time your post-emergence herbicides, with your pre-emergence herbicides. In other words, you put a post-emergence herbicide out, but make sure you have a pre-emergence herbicide down to keep the new plants from germinating. Because if you kill the ones that are existing there, just new ones will germinate. Because remember, you take a plant out and you get all this sunlight coming through the canopy, and just new plants just germinate. That's true with, you know, basically all weeds, tropical signalgrass, goosegrass, etc. Okay, so let's talk about a few weeds that you have in Asia that I run across. First, we already talked about tropical signalgrass. Now, why do I want to mention this weed? This weed is often misidentified as a crabgrass, okay? It looks just like crabgrass until it produces this seed head. And of course, on golf courses, we mow frequently. A lot of times you don't see a seed head. So I have seen this many, many times over my career where people think they have crabgrass, but actually have tropical signalgrass. Keep in mind too that crabgrass is not very common in tropical environments. Okay, so if somebody from, say, you know, I don't know, Vietnam or wherever would call me and say, hey, I've got a bad crabgrass problem, I'm gonna go, I bet it's not crabgrass. I bet it's tropical signal grass. So just be careful, don't misidentify it. Make sure that you know, to identify grasses, we always have to go look at a seed head, right? And you know, I always look around sand traps and things where they don't get mowed that tightly, so you can see a seed head coming out, and then you can get a proper identification. You know, one of the great things about the the digital world we live in now, most of the weeds I identify is simply from digital images. And if you were to send me this picture, if it's a high quality photo with the seed head, I mean, you can send me this from, you know, Hong Kong, and I can say that's tropical signal grass. So you don't have to send me a sample. If you can send a photo with the seed head, we can usually get it. Now, can't always get them because, you know, if it's something really weird, but it's something common like tropical signal grass, we can usually get it. So tropical signal grass, also known as small flower Alexander grass, it's a very common perennial in tropical golf courses around the world. Not that hard to control, but you have to use a combination of pre-emergence and post-emergence herbicides. And here's a good example. I just want to show you, forget the herbicide here for a second. What I want to show you here is, I'm not going to inundate you with data here this morning, but I do want to show you a few things. This is tropical signal grass control. This is a test I had in Jamaica. And this is the white bar is percent tropical signal grass control with 2 applications of MSMA. And this is, look at the dates here. This is in February, and they were applied back in August, September. So you see, we got good control with MSMA, but we didn't have a pre-emergence down, and the new tropical signal grass just germinated. And look at what happened when we put Spectacle in the mix, which is a pre-emergence herbicide. So this is a good example that you use a pre-emergence herbicide in combination with your post-emergence herbicide, and you will get residual control. Here's a drone photo of one of my research trials here, actually 2 research trials. You can see tropical signal grass is very bad down in Jamaica. And you can see too here is, I want to show you, this is a test here. When you get the tropical, this is almost solid tropical signal grass. And you can see that it turns everything brown when you put your herbicides out. But if you look down here, this is an older test. This is the Bermuda coming back in. So once you get rid of the tropical signal grass, Bermuda grass will grow in, but Bermuda grass is not going to grow until you get rid of that tropical signal grass. Okay. Now, another weed I see a lot in the tropics is tropical carpetgrass. That's the one that has that big, thick, wide blade, has a wavy leaf. So I see this one quite a bit in the tropics. Now, here's one I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about, because goosegrass is a big, big problem in the tropics. And again, remember what I said about that it's a sign that you may have compaction. So, you know, keep in mind when you see a bad goosegrass problem, you may want to check to see if it needs aerification. Goosegrass is a problem all over the golf course in tropics. You'll find it on tees, greens, fairways, roughs, everywhere. Notice when I mentioned it's a good sign of compaction. Think about where you see goosegrass the worst. It's usually right along the cart path, right? Which is where, you know, you have a lot of compaction. So it's a weed that when you have compacted soils, it's going to survive and do well. So let's talk a little bit about, one of the things I'm going to mention about goosegrass is an annual weed in climates that have frost, but in tropical environments, it becomes a perennial. So, for most of you, certainly in Singapore, it's going to be a perennial. If you're in a frost-free zone, you typically have perennial goosegrass. So here's what goosegrass looks like. And let me just mention to you here, I don't want to show you, again, inundate you with too many. And I'm not all for, they're probably the herbicide availability in, to the audience here varies all over the map here. So that's the reason I didn't put this too herbicide focused, Eric, but we can talk about a few things because these products are generally available worldwide. So here is Spectacle. Spectacle is very good on goosegrass. Here's Ronstar. Ronstar is very good on goosegrass, but here's Spectacle over here at 70 grams AI. And you can see that Spectacle does a very good job on pre-emergence control of goosegrass, as does Ronstar. Those tend to be our go-to herbicides for goosegrass. Also notice over here, this is Ronstar here. This is pre-emergence control. Not sure why that's coming in fuzzy like that, but this is pre-emergence control. Here is Ronstar, control with Ronstar, and you can see pendimethalin and Barricade and Dimension. They typically don't do very good on goosegrass control. So if you have goosegrass and you have access to either Ronstar or Spectacle, that's the product that you need to go with. Now, again, I don't know for post-emergence goosegrass control, there's a lot of work going on in the United States. Now I'm doing a lot of this work looking at post-emergence goosegrass control. We have some really new good treatments that we use in Bermuda grass. Here is speed zone. That's what SZ stands for. Here's the rate, and I don't know which formulation you have, but I just put our speed zone at 4.8 liters per hectare. And when we mix Pilex with it at 18 mils per hectare, and that's written correctly, that's not very much product, is it? When you mix those two, we get excellent post-emergence goosegrass control, and this is even big plants. So keep in mind, if you can get your hands on some of these products, it does a very good job. Okay, here's the Spurge I was talking about earlier. Remember the ones I said that had a white milky sap that's actually related to a rubber tree? This is Spurge, and this is a plant that's an indicator of nematodes. So if you see a lot of Spurge, go take a nematode sample. All right, now getting in the tropics now, torpedograss. You got a big problem with torpedograss in Asia. It's kind of a semi-aquatic weed. You know, a lot of times you'll see it down next to a pond, but then it'll creep out on the golf course. This is a major weed problem for us in Florida, also down in the Caribbean. You know, it has these big old long stolons and rhizomes, and that are really pretty awesome when it comes to weeds. So you know, just keep in mind with it gets its name, by the way, because of the sharp, sharp pointed rhizomes. It kind of resembles a torpedo, so the rhizomes do. So it's very difficult to control, but the product you want to use, if you can get your hands on it, is quinclorac, which is Drive. Now, you know, for those of you in Asia, you should have access to quinclorac because it's used quite a bit in rice production. So quinclorac Drive is a formulation we use in turf. And it's quite good on it. And then a lot of you may have access to Monument as well, which is trifloxysulfuron. That is also pretty good on torpedograss. All right, now let's talk about purple nutsedge. And let's see, Eric, I'm gonna try to wrap this up in about 5 or 10 minutes. Is that good?
That's good. You do have plenty of time, so no hurry.
Okay. All right, so
You're okay. You're okay. No hurry.
All right, purple nutsedge gets its, you know, purple nutsedge is awful in Asia. It's in the tropics, but particularly in Asia, probably because it's a native of Asia. But it's in tropical environments, it's really quite bad. Gets its name from the color of the inflorescence here, which is actually purple, kind of a dark red color. It produces these tubers that, underground tubers that really produce all these new plants, right? So what you need to do is you need to keep beating purple nutsedge up with herbicides to keep these new tubers from producing, because the more of these new tubers you have, the more purple nutsedge you will continue to have. Now, if you can get your hands on the products, the best product for purple nutsedge, blue bar here, is Monument or trifloxysulfuron, or Certainty, which is sulfosulfuron. So for many of you, these products are available in agriculture, and I know in a lot of your countries you can use if it's labeled in agriculture. So remember, sulfosulfuron or trifloxysulfuron, those are the best products to use for purple nutsedge. Okay, now some of you may have access to halosulfuron. Okay, and that does a good job so long as you put 2 applications out spaced about 4 weeks apart. But it does take 2 applications. You can see 1 application here doesn't do a very good job, but 2 applications does a very good job. Some of you may have access to flazosulfuron. This is a product out of Japan. I find it, in many areas of Asia, called Katana. It is a good product for sedges, and it's also good for killing all kinds of grasses, cool season grasses, if any of you have any of them, like perennial ryegrass or tall fescue or something like that, in warm season grasses. So, the other thing I want to mention is seashore paspalum does have marginal tolerance. You're going to be a little bit careful with it, but if you want to test some on seashore paspalum, it certainly does have a little bit of tolerance there. So I wanted to mention flazosulfuron, Eric, because in Asia, it is a product that we usually see. It's good on purple nutsedge and some of the other perennial sedges. So a product that we would probably want you to think about. Okay, so Eric, that kind of wraps up just some general comments. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for questions. I've been doing this a long time, and I really do believe that the best part of these presentations are questions and answers. So hopefully I piqued your interest in something, and you can have plenty of questions to ask. So that gives us about 45 minutes in the presentation part, and so Eric, we'll open it up for questions, and I've got as much time as you want.
Thank you, Doctor. That was great. And we do have some shy people out here in Asia, but some questions are already coming in. We have a question from Ross in Hong Kong at Sheko Golf Club. It says, Dr. Yelverton, with your recommendation for some cases of applying post-emergence with pre-emergence, are you talking as one app or separate apps, but within a close period of time? If within the same app, how do you manage to apply and dry on leaf requirement of the post-emergent product versus watering in one of the pre-emergent products?
That's a great question, and it's also a real dilemma when you want to tank mix them, because most of the time your pre-emergence needs to be watered in. So really what I like is in an ideal world is to put the pre-emergence out like a week before you put the post-emergence out. That way your pre-emergence is already out, it's watered in, it's working as a pre-emergence, and then you go in and you take out the post-emergence or with post-emergence herbicide, and you take out the weeds with post-emergence herbicides. That makes sense. It's a good question. And a lot of times if some products need to be watered in within 24 hours. So, a lot of times you can let it dry and water. I know it's good. I guess what I'm trying to rationalize here is if you could get it all out with one application. It saves you a trip over the golf course. But, you know, I want to make sure you do have that pre-emergence out before you put the post-emergence out. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a week before. It can be 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before. Just make sure, here's the point. Just make sure when you put your post-emergence herbicides out, you have a pre-emergence herbicide out that's giving you some pre-emergence control, right? When those weeds die, you just don't get a whole new flush of germination.
Thanks. We have a question from Vincent in India. What is your advice on using weed mats in landscape areas of the golf course?
I'm sorry, what was that, Eric? Weed what?
Weed mat, M-A-T.
Oh, weed mat.
mat.
Yeah. They work. You know, I assume you're talking about using them in limited areas there, right?
Yeah.
Not on a broad scale basis. So yeah, they work. One of the things you have to keep in mind too, though, with a weed mat, sometimes when you get soil up on top of it, weeds will germinate on top of it. So I've seen that. In fact, I got some cool pictures of weeds growing in artificial turf. So you have to keep that in mind.
We have a question from Jack in Malaysia. How often should you repeat the pre-emergent if your growing season is year-round? Would high rainfall affect its effectiveness?
It certainly does, yeah. You know, it depends on which product you're talking about. Let me give you the Hawaii example. You know, before we had Spectacle, which is indaziflam, we would put out Ronstar about 3 to 4 times a year. So every 3 to 4 months, we put out Ronstar, and we do it, you know, kind of equally spaced in tropical environments. What we found is that Spectacle, we can put it out about twice a year and get by with it. So it takes multiple applications. And here's another thing too, you know, these labels will often give you a maximum you can put out in a year's time. And I can tell you in tropical environments, that just doesn't work. So, you know, you got to kind of, I mean, I'm always going to tell you to abide by the label, but those labels weren't written for tropical golf courses. So, you know, if you're depending on the product you're using, it's going to take, depending on the product you use, somewhere from applications every 3 to 4 to 5 months to get your pre-emergence activity.
We have a question from Henry in Malaysia. How to manage timing of pre-emergence applications in the tropics, as there isn't a window for seed germination out of winter like the subtropical climate?
Well, you know, it depends a little bit on the weed, because some weeds do, you know, even in tropical environments, you may not have much of a difference in temperature, but you have a difference in day length, right? So, you know, some weeds you still have that kind of a winter, summer effect, right? So some weeds like tropical signalgrass, it tends to germinate. I think it'll germinate pretty much 12 months out of the year, but it doesn't germinate that much in January and February in the northern hemisphere, in case there's somebody in the southern hemisphere. So, you know, some weeds just germinate. I think goosegrass just germinates 12 months out of the year. Tropical signalgrass, it has flushes. So I always tell people to make sure you got herbicides down for that coming out of winter as the days start to get longer, because that's a time of maximum germination.
Great. We have a question from Rick in Malaysia, specifically on goosegrass. It says, how long do the goosegrass seeds stay viable without treatment?
That's funny, interesting. I had this question just this past week, or just this week. Goosegrass seed in soil tends to stay viable for about at least 15 years. So when you have when you produce seed, it's going to be there for a while. So you just can't you know, you just can't, you just, you know, when it produces seed, it's viable for a long time. I
Gotta
think
take care of it.
15 years is being modest. I think it's more like 20, 25 years.
We have a question from Jack again in Malaysia. Do weeds build up resistance to pre-emergence, or should we also rotate them?
Yeah, and you know, I meant to spend a little time on that, Eric, but we just were constrained with time. I was thinking maybe we could talk about that at a later date, but absolutely. Make sure herbicide resistance is a huge, huge issue worldwide. And we have to make sure you rotate herbicides, and you also, you don't necessarily have to rotate them, but you want to use multiple modes of action. Just remember, you know, if you have a resistance that develops to one mode of action, if you put another mode of action in there, it will tend to control it. So you get resistance by using the same mode of action time after time, year after year, and it will develop resistance, particularly goosegrass and some of the other things. So make sure that you use multiple modes of action.
Thank you. We have a question from Stephen in Malaysia as well. What is the top issue to consider when constructing or growing in a golf course to try and limit major weed problems after opening?
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to make sure you do is make sure you inspect that sod if you're laying sod. And of course, you know, when you grow in a golf course, you may not be sodding the entire golf course, but you usually sod some things, right? Like around bunker faces and things like that. So make sure you use clean sod. That's the first thing. I always tell people to go ahead and get on an aggressive herbicide program right out of the gate, because you know you don't want to have. I think you can justify using more herbicides early to prevent so much herbicide use later, right? So you know, you just don't want to get a big weed population that produces all that seed. So I'd get on it real early and kind of keep that golf course clean.
We have a question from Nizam in Malaysia. Any surfactant do we need to add as a tropical weather or high rainfall?
Surfactants for the spray
Yes.
solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, that usually goes by the individual product. If a product requires a surfactant, it will tell you on the label. That just all depends on which product you use. Like quinclorac always requires a methylated seed oil as an adjuvant or a surfactant. So it just depends on the product, but make sure you look at that label and see if it requires one.
Okay, a question occurred to me, you know, while we wait for a couple other questions is, you know, there's a lot of big topic here about overwatering and irrigation in Asia and globally as well. I mean, what, as a general, I know this might be a larger topic, but a general observation, irrigation and how does it relate to weed cultivation? I guess it's sort of linked with overall grass cultivation as well, or is there a separate impact?
Yeah, a lot of times herbicides will break down more rapidly in high rainfall environments, which means you get so much microbial activity. Herbicides are degraded by microbes, soil microbes. So, you know, the more healthy that soil is in terms of water and things like that, you'll get some degradation. So, you know, you don't want to overwater too much because, you know, you can exacerbate the degradation of some of these herbicides. Some herbicides move laterally, but, you know, typically in tropical golf courses where you have all warm season grasses, you know, it's just not lateral movement, not that big of an issue. Typically lateral movement's an issue where we have, you know, golf course, warm season grasses next to cool season grasses and things like that, where the cool season grasses may be sensitive to the herbicide you're using. So not that big of a deal, but just don't overwater. That's never a good idea. Remember, it's going to promote sedges, okay. Right?
Right. Is there any case where less water will assist you in your weed eradication process, or does it have an impact?
No, not really. I mean, typically, you know, if you water the golf course enough to keep grass growing and keep it healthy, you're going to germinate weeds. The big thing too, you have to keep in mind is is make sure that you grow, and I can't overemphasize this, make sure that you keep the turf competitive. That's the biggest thing. The more competitive turf is, the less weed problems you'll have.
I have another question from Nizam. Is our Ronstar work for both spurge and sedge weeds?
It does not. It's pretty weak on both of them. Most of those weeds, sedges and spurge, you have to take out with post-emergence herbicides. I mean, it does give you some control, but they're not great. It's not like tropical signalgrass or goosegrass where pre-emergence work pretty well.
Related to spurge, we have a question from Gemma. What active ingredient do you suggest to control spotted spurge? You probably already started that. And I saw in other literature, spotted spurge often grow in compacted soil. Is that effective if we're doing coring to prevent from them to grow back?
Well, spurge, again, the big thing with spurge is make sure you take a nematode sample, right? If you see that, usually with spurge, the herbicide to use is one that contains metsulfuron in it. That's really good on spurges. So metsulfuron is really the product that you want to use.
We have another question from Jack in Malaysia is, how deep do you need to go with phrase mowing to control weeds? Does depth matter?
It does matter, and I would just say the deeper you can go, the better. Now, you can use a phrase mower to go all the way down to bare soil, but, if you can get away with that, it'll grow back. And if it's summertime, you got a lot of sunlight, it'll grow back in 2 weeks. Our athletic field guys use it and they'll be back playing on it. Or sports fields guys, they'll be back playing on it within 2 weeks. So I would say, to answer your question, it's a very good question. And I would just tell you my best answer to it is go just as deep as you can. The deeper, the better.
I have a comment from Ross up in Hong Kong. He said, I can also support Dr. Yelverton's view that turfing in and turfing out new sod can prevent a lot of weeds from reestablishing. This year, we went through a lot of regrassing projects, which some areas like the Tees, we did use a non-selective herbicide first to kill off the old grass first versus areas of roughs where we did not. And there was not a big difference in terms of weeds returning. Very few weeds returned both ways. The only exception to this would have been some of the sedge grass, which did initially return, but was later choked out by the new grass, which in this case was Zoysia japonica.
Yeah, and that's that's a good observation. I appreciate those comments. But I also have to qualify it a little bit here. When I was talking about weed seed being in the upper 1 or 2 centimeters, and if you put new sod on top of it, it tends to the weed seed that are below the new sod doesn't have the energy to grow through the new sod. One exception to that is purple nutsedge. It can germinate probably, I don't know, maybe 10 centimeters deep in soil, probably more. So, purple nutsedge will be a little bit of exception, but things like goosegrass and tropical signalgrass and spurge and things like that, they're all going to be in the upper 1 centimeter.
We have another question from Henry in Malaysia. Does natural products such as corn gluten meal that widely used in agriculture crops work on the turf grass environment?
They do not. They do not. They do not work as herbicides. It's vastly overstated.
Okay. We have a question from Tony here in Singapore. Do you have any ideas on controlling Bermuda coming onto zoysia grass?
Yes, if you can get your hands on Bermuda in zoysia grass. So you want to get the Bermuda out of zoysia. So yeah, if you can get Fusilade is a good product that does that. fluazafop would be the chemical name or common name. Fusilade would be the trade name, because zoysia is tolerant and Bermuda is not. In fact, I've had a lot of research on that, and it really does a good job getting Bermuda out of zoysia.
We have a question from Nikhil in India. Pre-emergent for Axonopus and Goosegrass is the question.
Yeah, Xanopus being carpetgrass and goosegrass. You know, the Ronstar is good on it, as well as now you're trying to control the Xanopus, right? You're not. I think you're using it to control Xanopus, carpetgrass, tropical carpetgrass, probably. Am I interpreting that right, Eric? Make sure I got
I think
that.
so. Nikhil, you can just follow up by email, by the Q&A if you want to clarify.
Okay. But if you want to, you know, Xanopus is a perennial. Well, so is goosegrass in tropics. So if you're doing that, you know, you have to use a combination of what we're talking about, the post-emergence and the pre-emergence. You know, it's a small, Xanopus is a small seeded grass. Ronstar is good on it. You know, pendimethalin, if you can get that, they're all pretty good on it. Not too many things good on Spurge pre-emergence, although you can get some control, but you're going to have to mostly rely on post-emergence to get those weeds out. And of course, goosegrass being spectacle or Ronstar, yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned doing a lot of work in stadium environment, and we're also looking out here in Asia to extend a lot of work because of the common skill sets, etc. But do you find maybe what's the different challenges working within a stadium environment versus you know, golf course environment?
That's an easy one. Stadiums, the big problem is sunlight quality, light quality. The bigger the stadium, the worse they are.
That's the only problem? Only difference?
It's not the only problem, but that's certainly the major problem. Yeah. Yeah, those stadiums just not, you know, I mean, the bigger they are, the more they block the sunlight, right? So that's light quality is a big issue in sports fields and stadiums.
And how about turf tolerance and, you know, more activity on certain parts of the grass there? You know, in the stadium,
I mean, you know, when you go into sports turf, you know, you need a highly tolerant to wear, and that would be Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is almost always going to be your selection for sports fields. Even in the U.S., we'll push Bermuda grass way up north of its range because of its wear tolerance. So what we have to do is, I mean, we'll even push it up in really cold environments and cover it, you know, just to protect it from winter kill. But it's such a good sports turf. But it has a very high light requirement, right? So,
right.
You know, you can't put it where you have shade. And of course, we can have shade on golf courses too. You know, one of the things speaking of that, one of the things I have noticed on tropical golf courses, I'll bet I'll get some chuckles out of this, but I think it's true for some of you. I'm not saying it's true for all of you. There are just too damn many palm trees on golf courses. I mean, there really is. I love palm trees. Don't get me wrong. I love them. It's what helps define a tropical golf course, but they're messy. And I've noticed that developers plant too damn many of them. You know, you don't need, you know, fairways lined with palm trees. You know, you could take out half of them and nobody would know they're even gone, right?
Well, I think that's a general comment on trees on golf courses as being the superintendent's biggest enemy.
It absolutely
don't have any of those on sports fields. Usually
one of our nemesis, right? Trees. Yeah, I always tell people to take them down when nobody's there, because when they come back, they don't know they're gone, right?
Wait for that tropical storm.
Absolutely. Get a tropical storm come through, then get out the chainsaw and blame it on the tropical storm. Right?
It's been known to happen, that's for sure.
It happens all over the world.
Well, Doctor, that's been great. You know, this is probably the most questions we've had of any
Uh-huh.
speaker. So you've succeeded in your objective of spurring thought for everybody. And
Good.
it's been a great session, and we really appreciate your time and expertise. We welcome you out here. As I said before, when things clear up, we'd love to have you out here in Asia face to face. So on behalf of the AGIF and everyone, I really thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck. And feel free to contact me anytime, Eric, if I can be a help. And I certainly love to get out again and see the folks in Asia. So just let me know.
We'll be posting this on YouTube as usual for review and then fresh view for those who can't make it. And then I'll also, if you're okay, Doctor, I'll CC you on the communication of the attendees so that they can come back to you directly if they have
Absolutely.
any questions.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating. We will continue on our schedule of Thursday sustainability sessions. And with that, thank you for your time and have a great weekend.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Doctor. Cheers.
All right.